it would have looked a little better. Now it's more of a knee-jerk reaction to the court of public opinions, which I'll be honest, I've been in vacation mode. I have not been paying a whole lot of attention to the reaction of what that was going to turn into. And you know what? Like, it's going to play out all the way through. And you said something earlier about, is the NFL becoming the soap opera? I will tell you how desperate they are to make a storyline. Somebody sent the turf monster out to get Zach Wilson so that Joe Flacco could start against the Ravens week 1.
Just again, you can't make this shit up. And you know what, man? It's been a few years since this storyline played out. But do you remember when Kurt Warner had to come in and save the day for what we thought was going to be the franchise quarterback and Matt Leinart? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that Zach Wilson is Matt Leinart. I mean, he's far ahead, I think, than what Matt Leinart was coming out of college. But it's another veteran quarterback who is being put into an offense that I think that he can certainly succeed in, and a defense that has been built to help them win some games in a division that is going to be tough to win in, but they're going to be playing against bad teams outside of their division. So it's a team that can certainly pick up some easy wins with Flacco at the helm. I'm not a fan of Flacco. He's incredibly basic, but again, they got the offense built around them now, which is enough that what he did in the playoffs that one year that got him the big contract in Baltimore. I mean, I'm sure he can kind of go back to that a little dink and dump offense and let the players get yak yardage, which is exactly what he used to do back in Baltimore.
Right, exactly. And like they got some better backs than what he was used to playing at. Look, the Denver situation he went into wasn't a great one. They had a lot of talent, but they didn't really have the coaching situation. The Jets situation could be different, and I'm not saying that Flacco is going to supersede what Zach Wilson is. I think that Zach Wilson's injury is probably a little bit more serious than they're letting on. So I think he's going to miss the first 4 games, probably maybe like the first month, call it. But Saleh is linked to the 49ers from previous jobs. There's a reason that they came out quickly and said Flacco's a starting quarterback, because they don't want any of this Jimmy G buzz floating around there, because that would be something that would be super detrimental to like what they're trying to build or what they're pretending to build anyway. I don't know.
You're totally right.
Yeah,
doesn't need that tidbit.
This Jets team to me seems like they're probably a little bit better than what we're giving them credit for. I don't think that, if you want to use your markers, I don't think that the Patriots beat them twice this year. Like they're going to split.
The Jets they played the division. They can certainly play tough, right? That's one of the games that, like, again, I never like betting division games. I talk about that a lot, but AFC East, I'm never touching an AFC East game like ever. It's just not happening. One thing I'm not looking forward to, though, and I'm sure it's going to rear its ugly head a few times with Flacco at the helm, is I absolutely hate these underthrown balls that give the wide receiver that yardage with the pass interference calls. And I mean, I think he threw for like 1,100 yards in that playoff series that got him all the money. It was like 300 or 400 yards of that was all pass interference yardage. Like, that's terrible, man. Like, I don't like seeing that. He was always known to have a pretty good throwing arm, but I don't know. I haven't seen him let it rip recently. I don't know if he still has that ability, but I'm not looking forward to him bringing that back into his offensive repertoire.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to have the reputation that like a Kurt Warner did, like you referenced that situation. So, I mean, he's not in that kind of situation right now.
If he brings out 2 gloves this season, man, I don't know what I'm going to do though.
Well, hey, there's a two glove guy out there that's taking over the world, and we will definitely get to him. But yeah, I think that Flacco's maybe going to turn a head or two. If he started 4 games, are they going to go 4-0? No, but if they went 2-2 or even 3-1, I think that the Jets organization is going to view that as a win. They probably don't want him to be successful because it puts a lot more pressure onto Zach Wilson, which, that was kind of placed on his shoulders last year too, with the success of White there. But I don't know. We'll see how that one goes.
I was going to say at the same time, like when you're a New York quarterback, when you get drafted to New York, I mean, I think you sign up for just about every hill you have to climb in the NFL. Really, it doesn't matter. You could walk in there and have 9 straight weeks of great ball, and that 10th week you go out there and throw a duck, and they're not going to let you, like, oh, it's one bad game. They'll ride you until next Sunday.
Oh, right? For sure.
I think he's kind of, this whole Flacco thing. At the same time, we're talking about a guy who's like way on the other side of 30 here. And again, I haven't seen him let it rip recently, and that's kind of what he's going to have to take a dump in this offense, but I think Zach Wilson, I think, is not going to have to worry too much about Flacco taking the helm.
Oh, yeah. And that one's not going to happen. But, I mean, there might be a quarterback opening in Baltimore soon because the contract situation is getting interesting. And if the Ravens aren't willing to pony up that guaranteed money, I don't know, man. Like, he's going to go get it wherever he wants anyway. This looks like it's going to be a couple franchise tags. And, I'm not saying that he's going to be on a Kirk Cousins kind of deal. But for Lamar Jackson, there's no urgency for him to make this deal. This year, he's fully guaranteed because he's on his 5th-year option, correct? And next year, a franchise tag is fully guaranteed, and so is the second year if they end up going that direction. So at the end of the day, this guy's on a 3-year, probably like $85 or $90 million deal as it is.
But like, how does Baltimore – listen, people want to jump on this 22 preseason win streak thing. If anything, Baltimore, I think, is like as a team and as like a organization has been fanning the fires about that conversation because they would much rather have people talking about that than the fact that their MVP quarterback is still not under contract. And like you've got wide receivers that are asking to get out of town, basically. I know that Marquise Brown has come out and defended that and said he didn't ask to leave there. But what else are you asking to do if you're trying to get out of Baltimore? Like, it's not maybe leaving Lamar, but what else do you have to say about it, right? But yeah, like you've got your MVP quarterback, this guy who's electric. If this was any other team that didn't have a 22-game win streak in the preseason, that would be the number one story every single day. But for some reason, Baltimore likes to hype up a 22, 21-game win streak in the preseason. Really? This is what we care about? Come on. Well, and that being said, I mean, if you talk about these, these 21st and 22nd game, your quarterback who's come in and played has played pretty damn well. You got a tight end in Isaiah Likely, who's like, was he 2nd in the league right now in receiving yards for the preseason? I think he's 3rd in touchdowns or something like that.
Yeah.
The kid's balling out through 2 games. Why would you not look at that and say, let's get this thing pen to paper. Let's go play this 3rd game, get a little bit of, between each other and then go ball. Like, I don't get it. I think Lamar's really setting himself up to fail here, really. Guaranteed, you want a fully guaranteed contract when you're a mobile quarterback who takes as many hits as you do. You put on 15 pounds. Well, they said 25 during the game last night. I don't know if you saw that or not. And I kind of laughed at that when they said 25 pounds because no quarterback is putting on 25 pounds in an offseason. I know he was a really skinny guy, but that's a lot of weight in one offseason, right? So they came out today and said it was actually like 10 to 12 pounds. Yeah. You put on 10 to 12 pounds for a reason. You wanted to hit 220 for a reason because you know that your body's getting smoked every single year based on the way that you play the game. And now you're asking for a fully guaranteed contract. Sorry, man, your chips are just not there. Unfortunately, I know that Baltimore really doesn't have the strong hand in this negotiation, but that's a pretty aggressive ask, I think.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And they've offered him more money than what Kyler Murray's getting, probably slightly less than what Deshaun Watson is getting, which is probably where he needs to be anyway. I mean, nobody is locking him down as like the precision passer or anything along those lines, but it's not out of the realm of possibility for him to make $40 million a year, given the way the contracts are going. And I don't think, Tyler Huntley would be fine as the Baltimore quarterback, but they don't have the receivers to have a quarterback that can throw the ball. So they need to, Dylan Duvernay, as much as he has a pedigree from college, is not the guy that you want to be throwing.
You leave old Devin alone, okay?
He
came from a good program. He came from a good program.
That program might be on the rise. We might have a chance to get to them by the end. So we might actually touch on them a little bit. You spoke a little bit about the Ravens win streak. I put it in our notes just so that we could talk about how embarrassing it was. And why anybody cares, I don't know. You've already kind of touched on the way that you feel about it. There was another controversial thing that was going on. And, it seems to be picking up steam today a little bit more than it did yesterday anyway. This Thibodaux Cup block, this kid has been buried for going low on somebody really, he did his job. He did what he was supposed to do. Thibodaux in that situation should be putting his hands on the kid's back and pushing him into the ground. That's the play. You can't stand up. You can't make every play. It's probably better for him that he learned that lesson now and didn't get his whole knee ripped off. But, you played in like a slot back position. So this is probably something that you had to do often.
Like crack blocking and hitting somebody on a sweep back block, absolutely. And one thing that I was not taught to do, I was on the defensive side. I never played defensive end, of course, but Chris Long, we all know who Chris Long is, a very good defensive end. He came out today, and if you watch the play on replay, Thibodaux stood right up. Like there was no pressure immediately in his face. And Chris Long said, when you have no pressure to your face, you know that the run is going away from you. And the first thing that you're supposed to be doing is looking for that crack back or whatever you want to call it. It's not a crack block because we know that crack blocks are illegal. Whatever you want, it is referred to as like a crack back block, right? But that's Thibodaux. He's been in the LSU a few years. It's his first year in the NFL. These are things that you're going to get taught as you go on. Blocking is a hell of a lot easier than it is to receive a block, I think, too. Right? Like I think just like running a route is easier than it is to defend the route, I think, right? The person initiating that contact would have a little bit who knows where the contact's coming from as the blocker versus the defensive end guessing where the block may be coming from. But it's not a dirty play. This is a traditional block, right? Like what else are you supposed to do against a speed rusher outside of take out his knees? Right?
Well, right. And
when I say take out his knees, I don't mean violently as far as tearing them up, but cutting them so that his feet don't have any friction on the ground, or trapped on the ground.
That's the thing. Like, if you look at the knock on Thibodaux, and I say knock in air quotes because, we weren't in the rooms, but it seemed like Thibodaux fell in the draft and, he fell to like the 5th pick. So it's not a deep fall, but this guy should have been the first overall pick, but he didn't play against strong enough competition in the Pac-12. That was a problem. And they said that he tended to not pay attention in practice and he wasn't working hard. Well, guess what? These are the things that you would have learned in practice. This is something that you would have picked up on if you were doing that. And again, we're not at practice. We don't know. But I mean, this story seems to line up with the reason that he fell in the draft. And as I said, you don't want the guy to be hurt for 3 weeks. He's probably going to miss week 1
against the Titans. Well, that's the thing is like his chops have got to be, he's got to be licking the chops because he's going against a right tackle who we still don't even know is in Tennessee. I think it's going to be a turnstile. He wants to play, right? For sure.
Well, but now, you know what? Your first preseason, you just figured out, man. Like, these are professional athletes. You cannot just out athleticism somebody. You still have to know that little fundamental play. And would anybody be feeling bad for the kid that did this if Thibodaux put his hands on the back and pushed his face on the ground and he got a concussion, he's out?
Or if this was an undrafted player or a 5th round player.
Right.
Anybody care as much as if it wasn't a 1st round pick in New York, right? And then I mentioned it is Rich Eisen tweeting out about how this was a dirty play and everything. And I love me Rich Eisen. I really do enjoy him and his show and everything. But it's him. You are the face of the NFL to a lot of people when it comes to podcasts and knowing the rules, the ins and the outs, and calling out people and being open about calling out people in the NFL. When you make a call like this and then have to be called out by YouTubers down the road like Brett Coleman and saying you got to know your sport and know what's illegal cut blocking or what's illegal blocking and what's not. I mean, that's not right. He could have buried this kid's career, in the public image. Like the coaches are not going to have an image of them or a problem with them because they taught him how to do that. They're going to say, good play. You probably got us an extra 8 yards out of that. But in the public eye, he's certainly going to be buried. And it's just one par for the course. The poor Bengals, who really haven't had any legal issues at all there in a few years. Bengals just doing something dirty on the field. What else is new, right?
You can never shed history.
Can't get away from it.
A little piece of history I'd like to share with Bengals fans is 41% of teams that have lost in the Super Bowl don't make the playoffs the following year. That is something that the Bengals fans need to absorb as a little bit of history. And for history, we're actually counting down to our first Monday night game. I get that it's the preseason. I get that it's 2 of the worst teams in the league. But
we just typed up the Jets.
Yeah. We're looking at the Jets and the Falcons here. The Jets have already come out and said that they're not playing any A1 starters. This is going to be Desmond Ritter's time to shine.
So the Falcons said they're not playing anybody too?
Oh no, the Falcons are going to get mostly Ritter. I think. I can't imagine Mariota playing more than a couple snaps. But because of that, because it's honorary first Monday night game, our friends at Coolbet Canada have odds for everything. And because I am the type of guy that likes to support local business, like Coolbet Canada, I went and put some shekels on the over tonight. So we're looking at over 38 points. That'll be our Coolbet special. If you're not on Coolbet yet, use that Going for Two promo code. Get yourself doubled money. And then we're going to move on and we're going to have a little bit of fun here called Big Deal or No Big Deal. And I actually kind of wanted Rick on here. And because there was a big thing going on. And you know what, Rick's got his pool playoffs, and you know we wish him luck for that. Chad's football team, you know they're already 2-0, so you know hard to believe that they've already played 2 games, but 2-0, they're rolling along, so he's getting ready for that. So it's
you mean 1-1, right? Are you talking about preseason? I just lost my boys.
I was just talking about Chad's team.
Yeah, Chad, the Bucks. They lost. You said 2-0, right?
No, I'm talking about the London Beefeaters that Chad coaches for. I don't think.
The Beefs.
yeah. Chad does not.
I thought you were talking preseason numbers
right now. He is worried about the Beefeaters are 2-0, so we're happy for him. But when it comes to deal or no big deal, those two guys came to mind because the big deal over this weekend was Dana White kind of spilling the beans that he had prearranged for the Tom Brady and Gronk combination to go play for the Raiders. And basically this was all blown up by Jon Gruden, who, you know, if you pay attention to sports, you know that Jon Gruden's also not the coach of the Raiders anymore. But we finally have some clarity, some actual clarity to who the motherfucker was that Tom Brady was talking about when he was with LeBron James at the shop.
Yep.
And that was Derek Carr. He was talking about Derek Carr. He was like, this thing was a done deal. Dana White had this thing in place. And at the absolute last minute, it was just blown out of the water. I was full. I actually, when I first read it, I thought, no, this is all BS. And then I went back and like rewatched it. And I was like, oh wow, this is actually like this guy's not bullshit. He's real.
Yeah, I mean, I can only handle so much of Gronkowski. I mean, I'm not gonna when he went in on that New Year's Eve thing and smashed that big old statue. That was kind of an asshole move, right? But this is the stuff that I think I will enjoy about Gronk being retired. Because I don't think that Gronk is going to have very tight lips about what stuff that he experienced, saw, heard, whatever may be been involved in when it comes to the NFL. I think that there's going to be a lot of fun stories that come out when Tom finally retires. Because I do think he has a lot of respect for him, and he's certainly going to keep some things tight to the chest for that. But this is just a little idea. This is just a little tidbit of something that was never going to get talked about up until Gronk decided to call Dana out and say, you know, show the world what was going to happen. I was funny reading all the comments on Twitter after. It was a lot of the 49ers apologists that wanted to, well, Tom was coming to us. He was coming to us. He was talking about us and Jimmy. And no, man, like, this is clearly about Derek Carr. Like, well, Dana White had no impact on these with the GM. Dana White is like the second most important person in Las Vegas, like next to like to the Davis family, right? So I'm sure that if there was somebody setting up a contract, it was probably Dana White, right? So cool news, cool story to come out. Absolute joke that Jon Gruden. Like, listen, I like Derek Carr. I think that he's a good quarterback. I think that him and Davante Adams are going to have a great connection together. But are we sitting here talking about Derek Carr and even Davante Adams being there if Tom was there that first year? I don't think so. I think they would have had a Super Bowl potential that first year. The AFC wasn't exactly strong. Not that they were a good team, but come on, Tom can make a bad team into good just about overnight.
So that was the question that I wanted to ask is like, do you think that, you know, say Jon Gruden doesn't blow this up, do you think that Jon Gruden and Tom Brady could have made this thing work in Vegas? Because my immediate impact is, or my like the thought in my mind is, no. I think that the Raiders would have made the playoffs for sure, but that's it. And why impact Darren Waller by bringing in Gronk? And again, if you are a Raiders fan, this probably stings in your craw a little bit. It's going to take a lot to get over it.
Well, I mean, I think if there's one person that Jon Gruden bends his offense to or bends his mindset to, it probably would be Tom Brady. Like, I think that that's the one guy that he maybe says, you know, you've been down this path many more times than I have. I sat in a booth and watched you win many championships. You can kind of take the hold on this one. That being said, I don't think that we have a second round of Tom in Vegas. Like, I don't think that would be a long-term connection, whether he retires or he leaves to go somewhere else like Miami. May have come up at that point too. But
Right.
As far as like bringing Gronk there and hurting the development or whatever it may be that you would get with Darren Waller. With Tom there, man, we know what two tight ends does to Tom. Aaron Hernandez and Gronk all over again, right? They've been chasing that idea for years up in New England. Yeah,
we're
when
talking
Hernandez
Aaron
left,
Hernandez again. Yeah.
Yeah. So when he left, they chased that idea for a long time, and then they replaced it with slot receivers. But again, you give to Brady two tight ends, they're gonna have a lot of fun at the middle of the teams, no doubt.
Yeah,
but big deal. I think it's a big deal. And again, I think it's a cool story to come out. Don't care if it took a couple of years to break. It's still cool to go back.
Well, yeah, and it puts clarity onto like that big question from the shop. And like, I'm not a big fan of watching the shop, but that was one of those things that you thought you would never figure it out, or like maybe Brady 5 years down the road would spill the beans as like a Fox analyst. But this kind of like, even with the leave of absence of Brady, like I think you're right. I think like right now he was enjoying his time in Tampa. I think he's got some free reign of what he can do and not do in Tampa. I mean, I don't know what the personal situation was that had him away from the team for 10 days. Or
he wasn't on The Masked Singer. He did confirm that today. So whoever the internet sleuth is that got to finally, could you imagine being that random guy on Reddit that goes through all this time to figure this story out or think he figured the story out, and then somehow, some way it gets to Tom at a press conference? Like, that's pretty neat regardless, right?
Yeah.
You spend a Saturday afternoon trying to figure something out.
But I mean, he was at some resort, right? So whether it was like, I'm sure that there was more of a personal circumstance to it, or maybe you just had to watch the kids while Giselle went out and did her thing. Like it wasn't. I don't think many teams would let him do that. Todd Bowles obviously is allowing that to happen, and like I don't think any Buccaneer or football fans thinking, "Wow, Brady is not going to be ready for training," or like he missed a week of training camp, he's not going to be ready. Everyone's fine with it. He probably wasn't going to play in the preseason anyway. It doesn't really matter.
I'm interested to see how involved Bowles is. Really, is he going to actually be the heartbeat of that offense and involved that way, or is he just going to say, "Hey, Leftwich, Tom, you go"? You're like, how active are we going to see him on the sidelines as far as being in the ear of Tom or on the the playbook, the Surface tablet after reviewing stuff with Tom, or is that all going to be Byron? I am interested to see how that is, because does Tom? I know he's the head coach, but like, where does he fall in line as far as giving Brady the check to be there where he needs to have him, kind of thing, right?
Right, and the thing that's going to be interesting is the first time that the play doesn't get in fast enough, or like an indecisive call. How quickly is he to blow up at Bowles? Because I mean, we've seen it happen. We've seen Brady, like, passionate guy. He knows what he's doing. But if they don't call a timeout in time, or if they're rotating guys in wrong, he's not going to like it. So to me, I would say that him and Leftwich have the chemistry, and Bowles will take care of the defense, and Leftwich will take care of the offense, and they'll meet somewhere in the middle. Leftwich and Bowles will, but I don't imagine that Brady's going to have a lot of conversations with Todd Bowles on the sideline.
No, and that brings up. We're probably hopping off of this topic on a new one, but before we do that, I wanted to bring up like Kyler Murray calling his plays. How he had the opportunity. Cliff has made him do that, and initially it was to show Murray how difficult it was to bring in those play calls on time and be prepared for the next play that you're going to roll with the offense, and playing that chess game with the defense. And he got pretty excited after the touchdown that he looks like he orchestrated the drive for. I think that's a really neat thing. Like, I know that when I've gone to a few college games, the college teams typically have like 6 quarterbacks. 4 of them will be wearing red caps, and they're giving signals with everybody else at the same time. But I think that the way that the Cardinals are doing it here, sure, there's a time and a place, and maybe that's maybe the OC or the head coach's job to kind of learn putting the play calls in. But I think Cliff's far enough into the point where he knows how to call play. I think is a great idea, just to bring that quarterback up an extra level, to understand how maybe a coach may be thinking, how the personnel groupings are going to go through a play style. How can you counter what the defense is bringing in? He's a young quarterback. I think he's put a lot on his plate, but I think that's a really cool thing that came out of Arizona this offseason that I think that we will see a lot more of in the coming years.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, that is a standout of the preseason for sure. And I think that you're right. I think that a lot of people are going to have their younger quarterbacks go out there and do this. I don't ever anticipate like Tom Brady doing it, but or even a Derek Carr, but a Kyler, or if they let Josh Allen do this, or like I think it makes sense. And as a new quarterback comes in, you're playing the first quarter in the preseason and you're calling the second half. Quarter 2 is for your time to go get your interview out of the way, splash some water on your face, look at your iPad, but get ready because this is the way that it's going. I think that makes sense. The other thing that quickly stood out is the coaches that are making their guys wear full equipment on the sideline versus the ones that aren't. And if you just look up and down the
We
league,
talked about that week 1. And it hasn't really changed. And like a lot of people brought it up week 1, but I know we certainly talked about it. But yeah, go on. What you were saying there?
Yeah, like you look at the Jaguars, and that's the one because I've seen every Jaguars game for some reason. I don't, that's just the parallel.
You're chasing Trevor Lawrence. You're chasing sunshine. I get it.
Yeah, but their team sucks. They just played the Steelers. Their team sucks. They're not a disciplined team, and the guys, as soon as they're done, they just pat off. It's done. But you look up and down the teams that have a lot more control and structure, and maybe like a little bit more respect for their head coach. The Steelers, like Najee Harris, didn't even play in the game, and he was in full equipment the entire game.
Did you see where he like pretended to fight the ref?
Yeah,
at one point.
Yeah.
That was pretty jokes. Najee's not even playing tonight, but he's ready to brawl with this referee. Yeah, no, that was you're right. The Titans do that too. You're right. You show up. It's your office suit. You're going to the office. You wear your uniform to work, and you're only there for 4 hours. I think giving up 4 hours of your day to wear pads because most of the practices aren't even pads anymore isn't too much to ask, right?
Yeah, you're not getting used to wearing them because you've worn them your whole life, but you show up to play, and your mindset's different, and you're paying probably a little bit more attention. You're not dicking around on the sideline. Another thing that's been going on, and now I'm getting on the fence because
before we hopped out of that, I wanted to bring because you mentioned the Jags in that Steelers game. I thought it was pretty cool, mind you. I think it was a very lucky throw, and the DB just undercut it though. But when Trevor Lawrence did that whole finger wag, I thought that was pretty neat. I didn't expect that to come out of Trevor Lawrence in year 2, maybe in year 5 or 6 after he's won some games. But that was a cool little wag that he did at the the 7th string cornerback for the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's been an overall disappointment since he came in the league. So
listen, your quarterback took the show that game. I'm not going to take anything from Pickett, but that was a pretty cool little finger wag. Did Tumbo say it was okay? You think?
That's the thing. Like, you haven't done anything in the league. You haven't we're talking about the preseason. Just stop embarrassing yourself. Like, pull your shit together. Wear your pads the whole game. You know what I mean? Like, figure it out. Stop finger wagging people. Stop TikTok posting them. Who cares? But this Steelers quarterback competition is starting to catch my eye a little bit more because I don't think that Trubisky's been bad. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think Trubisky's been bad. I think Trubisky's been exactly what he's been expected to be. But Pickett has been significantly better than what most people thought that he was going to be when he got drafted. Now,
and not just that, you can say Shane, he has been better than Trubisky. He has. It's not just better than what we thought he was going to be. He's outplayed Mitch too.
But outplay, like they haven't played against the same competition the whole time. But what I'm saying is, has Trubisky been like? Is there a way for him to get leapt over when he's not playing bad? You think that there is?
I think that absolutely. I think that Tomlin came out and said that Mitch, it was his show. I don't know what the exact quote was, but it was like his reign, unless Pickett does something absolutely incredible or unbelievable or whatever. All I have to do, Shane, is point to one play in that game, and that was the pass over the middle to Freiermuth after taking a shell shock of a hit. While taking a shell shock of a hit from a defensive tackle there. That was on the money. It was within 1.5, 2 seconds. It was within stride. And again, he took the shot from a 330-pound lineman at the same time. I know that any quarterback's going to have that in a highlight reel, but that's one that I can point to among the other 13 passes he had that game where it's just dime, 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 dime. I haven't seen a bad pass from the kid yet. Competition or not, he's still putting it in the exact places it needs to be in order to get a completion and get some even yak yardage. He's putting these kids in great position to not get crunched either.
And all of that makes sense. And yes, he has been good. And yes, he's the quarterback of the future. But what I'm saying is, how do you take a job from somebody that hasn't lost it? Like that's just not the way. I'm trying to have
but it was
somebody.
my view of that is it was never his. I just feel it was never his.
It was always
his
Trubisky.
if you start.
It was always Trubisky.
If you start week, I think that you're right. He was signed to be the starter, and Tomlin certainly said it was his. But if he started week 1, I agree with you. How do you take it from him? But he's still in the preseason. I think it's still at this point anybody's game right now. And I said it was, I don't know if it was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, but if Belichick can start a rookie, Tomlin can sure as hell start a rookie. And it's tough when you got a fan base that is right now looking at a weakened Cleveland team for at least 11 games. A Bengals team which can take off at any moment. We don't know what we're going to see year 2 here of them, or the year of the hangover year. And then
again, we talked in the playoffs.
Yeah, and then we've talked about the Ravens, who I am still very high on secondary wise after all the injuries they went through last year. I know you're never going to like the Ravens, but there's an opportunity there for them to really take up some ground and compete in an AFC that, while got stronger, it still isn't the strongest. I don't think it can be the strongest right now. So take it. I think take him. He's playing well. You put him in Chase and Pickens, and you have all of these offensive weapons around him that make this game easy. Offensive line still leaves a little bit left to be desired, but that's why you give it to him over Mitchell. You know what you're getting out of Mitch at this point. We still know what the ceiling is for Mitch. What we saw in week 1 of the preseason. I think that's the ceiling you see for Mitch. That pretty pass with the rollout that I mentioned about Josh Allen with a dime in the back zone with the end zone. I think it's a great pass. We're going to rely on that, or we've already seen like 30, 40 something passes out of Pickett, right? He's amazing.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't get him fitted for a gold jacket yet, even though that would be fantastic. I don't see a scenario. It's not about being a rookie quarterback. Trubisky's not going to play in the next preseason game. So I just, how do you pass somebody that you haven't beaten yet? That's the thing I don't get. Pickett's not good at practice, and he hasn't been good at practice. He's been really good at the games, which has flashed and has looked good. Do I think that the record changes immensely regardless of which guy starts? No, I think either way they're a 9-10 win team max. But the way that Trubisky looks, the way that Tomlin has been acting, barring an injury, Mitch Trubisky's week 1 starter against Cincinnati.
You're saying bar none? Yeah. I would be. I'll be
barring an injury. Like I said, if the guy gets banged up at practice or something significant happens. Look, the Mac Jones thing happened last year because Cam Newton got COVID and couldn't go to training camp for 5 weeks or whatever, or 5 days. That's why it happened.
I think Cam Newton's play on the field is exactly the reason why we didn't see him the field again.
5 days. But you know what? I'm fine. 5 days of your rookie quarterback taking first team reps is why it happened. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened.
I'll be totally fine with you guys redshirting him this year because I still think that win-loss. I think that you guys have a higher ceiling win-loss with him in than with him out. And I'm not praying for downfall, Shane, but you've certainly had a good couple of decades, and I wouldn't mind a rough one here and there. Rough year once in a while isn't bad.
The problem is they've been preparing for this, so you know what? They have a good enough roster that they didn't think that they needed to draft a quarterback last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. The Trubisky thing showed how much faith that they would have in a Mason Rudolph, which is absolutely zero. And the Pickett thing, I think that they were shocked that he was sitting there at 20, to be honest. I know everyone was really down in the quarterback class, but this guy was compared to Joe Burrow coming out, which, call that good, call that bad. I don't know.
Well, you mentioned Mason Rudolph there. There was that trade today, but with Mullins getting traded over to the Vikings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And awfully surprised that Mason, has not been part of any. He's been the trade bait of discussion, it seems, this offseason among all teams. And he's not the player to get traded somewhere. So is he just going to get straight waived here? Or what's going to go on?
Yeah, so the problem is now, they have a
conditional 7th round pick for Mullins, right? So not going to be much from Mason, but
no, but it's not even that. You have a 3rd preseason game to play. They're not going to have Trubisky out there. They're limited. They're going to have Pickett out there. So you need someone to play the game. So you're going to be Mason Rudolph will play that. He'll take his Steelers jersey off for the one last time, and he's gone. Whether they trade him or cut him, it is what it is. But Detroit makes sense for him. He's not going to be the starter there, but a guy that you've been super high on, and a guy that Chad and I have been all over you about, is Daniel Jones. And it seems like, and you know what, believe the hype train, call it whatever you want to call it. It seems like he's performing well with Dayball. So are you believing? Are you getting back on this thing? Because I'm still trying to figure out who he's throwing it to.
Yeah, what's going on with? I was literally just on here looking to see if there's anything that happened while we were chatting. And did anything happen with Kenny Golladay? He's not getting traded or anything, right?
Not that I've seen. It's a lot of money for
No.
someone to eat up.
Yeah. As far as like Danny Dimes, I mean, I can't hype up one person in the preseason and not hype up another guy who I've obviously loved for the last couple of years, right? I keep talking about how the offense that they build around him is there. They have no offensive line. That might be the scariest offensive line in the NFL. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, the guy's he's gonna have to throw it 50 times a game. Like it seems like their run game really is non-existent. And I know it's preseason, but again, their offensive line is not doing them any favors at all. And I don't know if their defense can even stop drives. Like when I say drives, I think their defense is almost built to have chunk plays put on them. And you know, if it's like 5-play drives, 7-play drives, Dimes is going to be on the field quite often.
Right.
Just a mess of a team in a uglier mess of a division, I feel. And I know this might be the one time where I get to play devil's advocate with you on Danny Dimes and just say, I don't even know if it's for him anymore, man. I think a change of scenery for him is in store.
Well, and what's kind of funny about it, and you know, like just to tie it into what we talked about last, we're not going to take another Steeler tangent here, but the Giants actually offered Trubisky more money to follow Dayball, and I think that would have made Trubisky the starter in New York, bar none. I mean, you're following your OC there. He clearly, if they're willing to pay you a little bit more, which he didn't get any kind of money that has tied the Steelers to him in any way. But what, like, you know, what maybe that was something that got Daniel Jones to where he's at now. And maybe that's why he's starting to play a little bit better. He's listening, you know, or maybe it's just the third year and he's clicked, you know, like,
well,
maybe something has
changed. You're right. It could be. And my worry about Dable, any rookie coach, is, I mean, you've been in the system or in the system, but you've been in the coaching ranks long enough to obviously get a head coaching position. But there's the grind for the players that get to the NFL when it's like it's their career, it's a different job. It becomes a different type of beast for the coaches too, especially in that New York type life that we talked about earlier. Yep. Is this defense something that is catching steam right now in the preseason against second tier or third tier type defensive players, and then it gets exposed in the regular season? Is Danny Dimes Josh Allen? Like, I don't even think there's even a remote comparison. Even when Josh Allen was at his rawest coming into the league, I still think that he was a better quarterback than what Danny Dimes is. So I don't know if there's much more there to grow. You know what I mean? Like can he emulate Josh Allen? Nobody can emulate that arm. That's the problem, right? There's a lot of plays that were called that I can think of offhand where if it wasn't for Josh's arm, the offense wouldn't have ticked the way that it did last year.
Right. No, and
right?
You know
can't teach arm power.
Can't teach arm power, and this guy is used to hucking cantaloupe around or watermelons or whatever that farm that he had out in Wyoming. So, I mean, that's just a different kind of strength that he's got.
Antelopes.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, something wild like that. But all right. So really quickly, last NFL point, and then we'll just quickly put a college spin on things and maybe a quick MLB thing for like the last 5-7 minutes. Is no news good news in Tennessee? Because I haven't heard anything coming out of their camp, and I haven't heard anything at all. Like there doesn't seem to be any like media coverage towards them, and is that good news for where you're at?
I mean, unfortunately, there's not much that's just sex. There's no sexy battles in Tennessee, right?
But that's a good thing, right? Like you don't want the Malik to supersede Tannehill right now. Like it's not his year, and you don't want Hassan Haskins to be pushing Derrick Henry for carries, even though it looks like
you're right.
Looks like it might be.
I really don't. I really hope that Derrick Henry doesn't see 300 touches this season. That would be really nice. There is a couple of stories in Tennessee that is certainly, I think, going to shape our team. and that is our right tackle position, which is downright horrible right now. Got a rookie from Ohio State who's going to probably have to play over top of the second year and Dylan Radins. But the worst one is, I've talked to you about this before, Treylon Burks, man. He's got like 2 catches in the preseason. He played damn near the entire game the other day, and he played most of the first half and a little bit of the third quarter in the first game. We're talking two passes and a carry, a couple of extra targets that haven't unfortunately been caught, and some of them are Malik. Like 2 of them, he had some routes that were wide open and Malik didn't pass to him on. But this is a first-round receiver who's supposed to be our AJ, man. You know what I mean? Like AJ didn't exactly wasn't a preseason hero either, but at least in his rookie season, he had like 9 catches. You know, like this is terrible. 2 catches and one of them being a rush, so it wasn't actually a catch. Sorry, it was one of those end arounds or whatever, right?
But is he getting targeted a lot? Like, I'm not even going to pretend like I'm watching the Tennessee preseason games. Is he getting targeted?
That's what I mean. Like some of it is just Malik, right? That first game, Malik Willis got pulled because he wasn't throwing the ball, and there were a couple of them were on wide open throws. One of them would have been to Treylon Burks, which probably would have been a touchdown if he would have caught it. The second this past game, he was certainly targeted. They certainly tried to get him into the game. It isn't working. Malik tried to stay in the pocket more, and at this point, I know that I mentioned to you on draft and how happy I was that we got him in the freaking 4th round. But like Kyle Phillips, like I think that this is a guy who's really shown up, and he may even have an opportunity to get way more touches than Treylon Burks, especially being that slot type of receiver.
I was gonna say, this is the guy from UCLA, right? Like this is who we're talking
about.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And you know what? Like receivers come from all rounds. I mean, really, what it comes down to is can you scheme your guys open? Kyle Phillips would be a nice piece to have in the middle. I really don't know who's going to be playing alongside Burke out there, but
Robert Woods, Bobby Trees, and that's the other thing too. Is really Bobby Trees is coming off an ACL injury, so people are kind of knocking him for that. He's not been wearing a brace for a long time, but again, he's probably the number 1. He probably is a number 2 on a lot of teams, but he's probably the number 1 here in Tennessee. And do people talk about a sexy pick for number 2? Like, there's no sexy talk there in training camp, right? Well, Burks or Racy McMath. I mean, if I was to say that to you, you might know him because he went to LSU, but most people would not know who that guy is. So,
yeah, and well, I think that the fact that there is no storylines in Tennessee, given the way that they got eliminated from the playoffs, is a good thing. I think that it's a good thing for Tennessee. It's a good thing for that entire division. You know that you don't have to worry.
I think
about
that you're a betting guy. You're a betting guy. I think that they actually, as far as a number 1 seed the following year, I think that we have historically the worst betting odds of any number 1 seed over the last 20 years. So, I mean, there's that news for you. Nobody's giving Tennessee respect. And that's I think to win the division too. Like that's not even a championship game, Shane. That's just to win the division over Indy.
Yeah, and look, Indy, they got a good squad. They got a rookie receiver out there that you're probably gonna hear a lot about, and that's you know exactly what I'm talking about. But those battles will play out. We'll see how things go. This is the Monday prior to the start of college football. So we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't touch on the top 3 things that have been happening in college football. Thing 1, ESPN is out for the Big Ten starting in 2024. Yeah. And 3 networks came together with $7 billion over 7 years to broadcast Big Ten football and basketball. And I think that it's better for us. I mean, we're looking at CBS. We're looking at Fox continuing that partnership. And the ultimate Venn diagram just got drawn because NBC is now in the running with the Big Ten. And you know what that means? That means that Notre Dame's coming to the Big Ten. You know, this was the reason I told you I didn't think that they would ever be a part of it. But now that they're a part of it, I think that it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, they've been there independent long enough. I haven't watched personally an ESPN pregame show in quite some time. Like I really didn't enjoy them. As for on the college season, like I mainly watch those shows to see the signs in the background from the fans rather than actually listening to what those guys were saying on air, more or less. Right. I'm with you. I'm excited to have more analysts and more opinions, better coverage. I think in the grand scheme of things versus the same 4 talking heads every week that have to talk about the same 7 teams. So I think that's going to be exciting for us. A lot of money, man. This is just crazy. I don't know, like the NIL deals that these kids are getting. I don't know if you saw Dijons, the mustard
exactly.
there. But you got that. You got the $7 billion for college athletics. Like, could they become their own league? Like, and just break away from the NCAA? Shane, is this going to happen?
So the college football playoff is already talking about how they would do that, and really, I don't fully understand how they could do that. I think that this is more of a threat to the NCAA to regain the control over what they want to do. Because right now the NCAA doesn't want a 16-team playoff. Like the committee wants a 12-teamer so bad. So I think that's the way that we're headed. We're going to have a couple power conferences between the SEC and the Big Ten. And that's 100% going to be like, just the way that they're going. Oregon has now met with the Big Ten in Chicago to see if there's a little bit of a suitability going on there. Because they're following along now. Yeah, they're just following along now.
Right. You're right. I totally get why they're doing it, but time zone wise, man, it just is gonna suck. Right? It's like Hawaii. Like
it's gonna suck probably for the players, but the big recruits are gonna want to go there because you can now play Big Ten football in every single time zone in the US. And that's important. I mean, you got the two biggest media markets in, like, Rutgers is in New Jersey, but basically call that New York, but kind of Chicago.
Which I saw the other day.
Yeah.
The Rutgers sells their tickets at Costco. I don't know if you know that or not. You can buy it's just pretty insane.
Yeah. And now you got USC, you got Hollywood, all the Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, who knows who these other teams are going to be, but I would say it's only a matter of time for Oregon. I also think that because NBC is now in the mix with the Big Ten, I think that you're going to see the Irish jump over, which will probably be bad for mine and Chad's friendship, but that's okay. We'll work that thing out when it happens.
It's so crazy that if Oregon joins the Big Ten, because the Big Ten, like jersey wise, color scheme wise, tradition wise, they're so old school and just vanilla, right? And then Oregon comes in with this crazy spread offense, the crazy jerseys that they're going to trot out every other week. Wild. It's such a different atmosphere that Oregon's. They're bringing that West Coast atmosphere over to the Big Ten, man.
Absolutely. And look, I think it's good for the conference. I mean, it is going to suck for some of the teams that will never have a shot. Like, Maryland is probably the new Missouri. Missouri. How many relevant years can you remember Missouri having in the SEC since we've been college football fans? Like maybe one when Drew Lock was there. Maybe.
Yeah. Before that was when it was Blaine Gabbert. They were kind of relevant that year.
Right. Exactly. And that's where Maryland's going to be. And, like the Nebraskas of the world is Arkansas. Every 10 years, you might see them pop their head up. But another strong thing for college football is Urban Meyer is back. And I don't know if you saw this, Galen.
Strong? Oh, I saw. Well, the only network that, of course, would hire him back is Fox, right?
Yeah, he's doing Big Noon Kickoff again. Yeah, well, he was there before, and he left to go coach the Jags and kind of shit the bed, and now he's back. But I think that it's good for college pregame because I get that College Game Day on ESPN is the one that most people think when you're thinking pregame. I'm telling you, the Fox one is awesome. And
yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm excited for it, for sure, to be off ESPN. Fox does do a good job.
Yeah. So definitely looking forward to that. Really quick, 2 minutes about baseball. Blue Jays had a hell of a series in New York. They got this thing down to 7.5 games, if my mind is not escaping me right now. And
I think you might be inside of that, actually.
Yeah, I believe that, when we were on here and we were talking about what they needed to do kind of down the stretch to make the run towards September, I was looking at them going 10-6 in their last 16 games in August. Right now, they've only lost one of them. So baseball in its simplest form. I know I've said this to you a million times, and anybody that watches has probably heard me say it, but you're going to automatically win and lose 50 games. There's 100. So it really depends on how those 62 games in the middle work out for you. And right now, the Jays are just on that stretch to figure out where they're going to go. I think that they're a playoff team. I don't think that they're a World Series contender the way that we thought. They got another big series against your Red Sox, and we'll see if the Red Sox can hold up. But the Jays seem to have had the Red Sox number this year. The way the Orioles have had the Jays number.
Well, that's what I was just going to say is like, I don't even know, like, it's going to be fun to play spoil party here as a Red Sox player, but really, I mean, do they have anything they can to go to bat with these Jays right now? And that being the Jays have played, they had 5 games there that was really, really good. But then they're going to lead into the Orioles series, right? After that, and I think you guys got to play them 2 or 3 more times before the season ends. And we joked, months ago about how they end the season with them, and that's awesome. And then suddenly you guys just can't seem to beat them. You can beat the Yankees, but you can't beat the Orioles, which is crazy. And you still got to play the Rays, who don't want to be losing ground either, right? So it's going to be a good month and a bit of baseball left for you Jays fans out there. They'll make the playoffs, but I just don't think they're long for it. If Springer just keeps hitting that DL, and I think there's just too much patchwork. Like I think that trade deadline did not go down the way that I think that management wanted it to go. I don't think you got enough to get you over the hump, fortunately, and I guess it's patchwork. Unfortunately, it's not going to get you far.
Yeah. White and Scrappling are only going to get you as far as you need to. The other pitching, I mean, Manoah's been great. Gossman is somebody that you could rest your hat on and be comfortable with. Barrios, you don't know what you're getting, but the best of him is better than most, and the worst of him is still better than Kikuchi. So we'll keep him in the rotation no matter what. But it's interesting to see Yankees got a big series against the Mets, hoping that the Mets can do a little bit of work and keep that Yankees streak kind of down. But we'll see how we go. So I mean, we're in fantasy football draft season, so everybody out there draft responsibly and don't take Christian McCaffrey in the first round. Yeah, just do auto draft and hopefully you don't get Christian McCaffrey in the first round. Kalen, any final thoughts before we roll out of here?
I know it's we don't usually cover hockey at all, but I saw the Islanders made some signings today. Here it is on August 22nd. And Lou Lamoriello decides to finally announce some signings. He finally has Wi-Fi back. The reason I'm touching base on that is because they re-signed their players. They didn't sign anybody as a free agent. And the big joke here is that they haven't made a trade at all. And it's been exactly 383 days since Lou Lamoriello said they're not getting any better just by signing people. They're going to have to make hockey trades. Here we are.
Yeah.
And I know it's out of our realm normally, but I thought that was a funny thing to happen here at the end of August. Finally, the news out of the Islanders.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have lots of time to talk hockey when we make that announcement with Rick. But for today, we should sign off and just make sure you're checking out the socials. Check out Instagram, Facebook. Josh is all over the TikTok. Football season is back, so definitely we're going to see a little bit of action on the website. And go ahead and check out the boys at Coolbet because, you might as well get yourself an over.